Apple just announced the brand new MacBook Pro 2019. There's a new 16-inch model along with 13.3-inch version of this year's MacBook Pro. And today I want to talk a little bit about the new 16-inch model, which presumably is the direct replacement for the previous 15.1-inch, which I have in front of me today. Now, I'm just a moment, try it. Got a jam key. The MacBook Pro was notorious for the keys jamming. The past few generations, they've been trying to make changes to the butterfly mechanism in order to improve it, but unfortunately they never really got to the bottom of it. And one of the highlights, or one of the major design shifts in this brand new 2019 model, is the complete replacement of the butterfly keyboard with a more conventional scissor mechanism, which is similar to the one we found on a previous generation of MacBook Pro. So hopefully they've done away with all the bugs and all the issues that have come about because of that butterfly keyboard. Apart from the keys getting jammed being the major problem, it was also noted to have very poor travel. And travel is the distance that those keys will move up and down as you're typing. And as you can imagine, when you're typing, especially copious amounts of words, and if you're fast at typing using multiple fingers, you need to get that tactile feedback. You need to know that you're pressing that key down. And unfortunately, Apple just went that little bit too far on the previous keyboard, reduced the travel, and really, I feel, affected the quality of experience that you should expect from a MacBook Pro product. And a lot of people would agree with me. Apart from that poor travel, really those issues with the keys getting jammed were a major problem for so many people. I've got first-hand experience with that, having produced a video where I demonstrate a solution to fix the jam key on a previous generation of MacBook Pro. I'll leave a link to that in the description box below if you want to check it out. But what's really notable about that video is not the content itself, is the fact that it's had over 200,000 views, which really demonstrates just how much of a problem that old butterfly keyboard mechanism was for Apple. If one YouTube creator such as myself managed to get 200,000 views on a video that address that problem, imagine how many other videos are out there and how many people had problems with that keyboard. It must be well and truly over 1 million, which is really quite phenomenal when you think about it. So thankfully, the brand new version of the MacBook Pro, they've addressed that issue and replaced the keyboard altogether. And incidentally, they've also made a slight change to the keyboard. There's now a new mechanical escape key on the top left-hand corner, and the touch bar starts in after that point. Interesting to note they put that in there. I think a lot of people complained about the missing F keys and the escape key, and they've reintroduced it. Well, what else is new on the MacBook Pro? Apart from that 16-inch Retina display, we also get a new sound system which delivers much deeper bass and clearer sound, and an improved microphone array. There's apparently 3 microphones built in that is able to produce professional sounding audio, they say. Now, I haven't had a chance to check that out, but I would always take that with some reservation when Apple talk about a feature being professional quality, because as I've mentioned so many times on this channel before, audio is not so much about the quality of the microphone, but it's also about the technique and the placement. So even if you have a great sounding microphone, if you're speaking from this distance to the laptop, it may still pick up a lot more ambient noise than a lapel microphone or a dedicated boom microphone. So I'm not so sure if it's going to be usable. Certainly I'm going to get my hands on one at some point and test it out. But the fact is that it's actually an improved microphone and much better sound system. In terms of actual processing power, thanks to the more advanced thermal design, the Intel Core i9 processor with up to 8 cores and 16 threads of processing power sustains higher performance for longer periods of time and delivers up to 2.1 times the performance of a MacBook Pro. What's really significant about the redesign of the internals of the MacBook Pro is the changes to the thermals of the unit. We get 28% increased airflow and we get 35% larger heatsink. Now the thermals are really important in terms of getting full capacity out of that processing power. So as you can imagine, i9 processors are going to get really hot, and the last thing you want is for those processors to be throttled because of the excess in heat. So really, by improving the thermals, you should be getting the best out of those processors as is possible on such a size unit. And this has always been a problem and always been a subject of criticism for previous generations of MacBook Pro as well. In terms of memory capacity, we can take it all the way up to 64 gigabytes of DDR memory, and the RAM is 2660 megahertz in speed, which is very similar to the previous generation. In terms of the video card, we get the AMD Radeon Pro 5000M series, which delivers the most graphics horsepower ever seen in a MacBook Pro. The 16-inch MacBook Pro base model is over twice as fast as the previous generation base model for seamless playback and faster rendering of ultra high definition video. And with the optional 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM, you'll get up to 80% faster performance when executing tasks like color grading in DaVinci Resolve compared with Radeon Pro Vega 20. The thing they didn't do on this generation, which I thought they might have acquiesced to, and that is to introduce more ports, or rather reintroduce more ports onto the MacBook Pro. The last few generations, we've had the USB-C Type 3 Thunderbolt ports, which are great for high-performing devices, but quite often you will need to interface with older peripherals, older camera gear, even HDMI input. All of that is lacking on the MacBook Pro. And that means that you're going to have to carry around dongles with you. And that also costs more money, but the biggest problem with that is that you may leave them behind, and if you do, you're going to be vulnerable and you're going to have situations where you can't get the job done when you're out in the field. It's actually happened to me on a number of occasions where I've forgotten the dongle and I'm out in a shoot and I'm not able to get large video files across to the MacBook Pro. And that's been a really frustrating experience. Certainly you can go wireless, and I've actually produced some videos demonstrating how to do it with my camera gear. However, when you've got 2 gigabyte files, wireless is just not going to cut it. It's just not going to happen. So really, I think they could have introduced more ports on the MacBook Pro, at the very least HDMI, and preferably the addition of an SD card slot so that you can get your media out of your camera most efficiently. They haven't done it, you've still got the same ports. The other thing that has been improved on this generation of MacBook Pro is battery life. They're rating it up to 11 hours, but as always, I would advise that you take that with a grain of salt, because these tests that Apple perform are often done in a controlled environment. Now, when it comes to practical usage, if you're running power-hungry apps like Photoshop, Premiere, and Lightroom, and if you're tethering a camera to the computer, anything that's sort of draining battery power, you're going to get way less than 11 hours. Realistically, on this 2016 to 2017 model, it was rated at 8 to 10 hours, and I was only ever able to get 2 to 3 hours when I was using it out in the field. And that could be even doing basic things like tethering to Lightroom, or it could be just doing some basic video editing in a cafe or at a client meeting or whatever it might be. I might only get as much as 2, sometimes 3 hours if I was lucky. So even though they say it's got 11 hours, it's a welcome addition, or it's a welcome improvement to get the extra battery performance, but I wouldn't expect to get anywhere near that in real world scenarios. So they're the major improvements of the brand new MacBook Pro. I'm hoping to get my hands on one at some point. I won't be actually upgrading to this year's model myself. I recently picked up an iMac, which is now performing the bulk of my video editing requirements, and I'm using that as my daily driver, and this has really been delegated down to just a out in the field machine, and I use it for going to meetings and the occasional monitoring of a video shoot on location. And I would probably look at upgrading when Apple finally decide to go beyond the incremental improvement and actually give us some kind of radical design transformation in the MacBook Pro, which I think is well overdue. I can't remember the exact year, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this type of look of MacBook Pro, the space gray, came out around 2014 or 2015 maybe. So we're really approaching the 5-year mark by next year that this would have been around. So it's almost as though Apple's design philosophy is in alignment with the way car manufacturers approach design, that every 5 to 7 years is a major shift in the design. So we're taking much longer to see new design and innovation coming from Apple. So in summary, let's take a look at who should be considering this MacBook Pro. If you have a MacBook Pro prior to 2015, then it's probably not a bad time to jump in and get one now if that's what you're after. We're at a point now with these minor improvements that we're getting perhaps the best MacBook Pro they've delivered so far. If you have one from 2016 and beyond, there may not be enough in the upgrade to justify spending the extra money and going for this year's model. As I said, you get the 16-inch display, which is quite nice to have. You get the improved processing power and video processing. And you also get the ability to upgrade to more internal SSD storage, but all of that comes at a price. So if you do spec this unit up to the top configuration, it's going to be quite a pricey proposition. So I'm not so sure that it's a worthwhile update unless you happen to be in the market and need to cycle your product now. I'll certainly be waiting till next year or the year after before I consider jumping into a brand new MacBook Pro. If you get a chance to get your hands on one, I'd love to hear your feedback, what you think of the brand new keyboard in particular, the processing power, the performance, etc. Feel free to put your comments in the comments box below. If you want to see more videos from me, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and you'll be notified of up and coming video releases. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Bye for now.